I'd like to move on to the policy side of the House, because that ultimately is where you and I met each other in your role with the Institute of International Education. And you were responsible there for what's known as the Open Doors Report on International Education Exchange. So you really were one of the policy researchers who knew about the migrations, who's coming, why are they coming, how long are they staying, what are they studying, what are the benefits, what are the policy arguments for or against their presence in the United States. And so I want to get into all of that, including some of the stereotypes and myths that a lot of people have about who the students are who are coming to the United States. Before we do that, in broad terms, I know it's an impossible question to answer specifically, but there's something on the order of 1.1 million students coming to the U.S. each year. Who are they and why are they coming?
So it's 1.1 million, but we have to take account of the pandemic, which last year was very, very difficult for US universities, for the country, for international students themselves, because as one would expect, there was an actual decline. But even so, one could say that there are about 1 million students who are in the US studying, and I would say thousands before them who have been coming to American universities, again, since the 1800s, because that's how, if we look at the arc of history, that's been one of the main ways, or one of the most fundamental ways in which the US has developed relationships with the rest of the world. It's been through its universities, where scholars have traveled on foot to the US, they have sailed to the US to come and study in our universities. So who are these million students? They come from over 200 countries around the world. One would think that they are clustered in big cities, but that's not true. They actually study all over the US. So they are a pretty large presence in small college towns and big cities on both coasts, and really everywhere in the US. They in recent years, when we sort of think about international students, and just in terms of the large numbers, very often that face of an international student is an Asian student, because again, when we think just sheer numbers, most students, over half of them, are from Asia, and primarily from China and India, and the country I originally came from. But the reality is that who has come to the US over time and who has not come has been also a reflection of geopolitics, of national policies. So, for example, soon after 9/11, we saw a large influx of students from Saudi Arabia coming to the US because of a large scholarship program, the King Abdullah Scholarship Program, that was launched between Saudi Arabia and the US to try and send more students to the US from Saudi Arabia as a way to build mutual understanding. We've seen a lot of Brazilian students come to the US in recent years, again, because their country launched a large scholarship program. And now the most recent discourse is that we are likely going to see a big drop in Chinese students, again, because of geopolitics, what's going on politically between the two countries, and also due to the pandemic and other factors.
And you know as well as I do that a lot of Americans, including some motivated by racism or fear of the other, and some who may not be motivated by that, who might be operating in good faith, but ask the question, should we really be giving so many seats in our colleges and universities to people from other countries, many of whom return back home, instead of filling the seats with people domestically who can then thrive and benefit both themselves and their country economically better here? How do you respond to that?
So there are many arguments to be made for this, and I will save the economic argument as the last one, because that actually commodifies the value of international students. I want to start with the other arguments first. So the first thing that I would say to most Americans is that if you are a parent, or even if you're not a parent and you yourself have been to college in the US, your universities are not going to be what you think they are if it were not for this international flavor and the fact that the US has consistently attracted international students and scholars from around the world. It's what gives, when we think of the quality of an American higher education, it's what gives US campuses their quality, that international flavor, their global rankings. All of our top universities that are in the top global rankings that we all want to send our kids to really would not be what they are. Because again, it's widely understood globally now that for a university or a college to offer a top-notch education to its students, regardless of where they come from, they have to offer the opportunity for students to be global thinkers. And they can't be global thinkers if they can't interact with people from other countries. So I would say...
Because even if they end up running in the C-suite, running a US-based company that is multinational, they better have an understanding of other cultures, and what better way to do it than interacting with some of those students during their college years.
Absolutely. And the other statistic I will share is, which sort of sums up this argument, is if we look at the reverse side of the coin of how many American students actually get to be international students themselves and go abroad, it's quite shocking to learn that only 10 out of every 100 US undergraduates will ever venture abroad. So we have to ask the question that what about those remaining 90%? And how are they going to be global thinkers, global executives, global leaders in what they are doing? So I think that is the most compelling argument of all. The second is that even so there's two groups of students, right? There are the ones who will come to the US, who will study, who will stay on, and who will immigrate and really become part of that fabric of immigrant America, which was my story. And if statistically, if we look at it, that's actually the larger proportion of international students. But then there are the ones who go back. And to your earlier question, that what's the value on educating those, because they're going to go back. The value is, and we've learned this so much over the past 4 or 5 years, that we risk becoming an insular country. We cannot be an island unto ourselves. We need to remain connected to the rest of the world. And what better way to remain connected than for people who've been educated in the US to carry American ideas and values and influence back to their home countries, where they are becoming leaders of universities, which will then host American students and scholars who go there, who are launching companies that are engaging in business ties and relationships with the US. And so it's that circularity of exchange of information, knowledge, and goodwill that we honestly cannot survive without today. And then the last argument, and then I won't say more on this topic, but the last argument is, of course, the financial one. I lay this out in my book, that if you ask the average American, they don't realize that the phrase I use in the book is that international students are the invisible and unacknowledged drivers of higher education in the US, because each year they're bringing in anywhere from $38 to $45 billion to the US economy, and it's the 6th largest export for the US. So the US is selling its higher education degrees without its universities ever having to leave American soil. So I think that's the last and most compelling argument.
Thanks for watching this video clip of the Speak Good podcast. If you'd like to hear the complete episode, please check out your favorite podcast directory and subscribe now. Thanks for watching.